I want to talk about difference between potentially your golf swing or an amateur and the professionals. As you can imagine, there's a lot of differences, but there's one, for me, huge difference. It's the right arm, or the trail arm. So if right-handed golfer, it's your right arm. In my experience, when I've worked on the trail arm with golfers, they almost instantly hit it better. So I'm going to share with you a few little tips and tricks to get your trail arm working a lot better. So when we look at the backswing, we've really got to get this arm kind of folding correctly. What we can do with this trail arm is we can do kind of a number of things. And if I took my setup, and you can see where my palm is, it's sort of facing the flag down there. We can simply, in the backswing, we can simply add a bend to this arm. Now you can see where my palm face, it still faces down towards the target, and my elbow sort of starts to point behind me and up. Alternatively, we could fold the arm and we could do this with the palm. We can see the palm is facing up, and from that camera, the elbow is down at the ground, so the complete opposite, but the palm is facing up. Just watch how many almost shapes of backswing I can make with my trail arm. We could do this one, which you spoke about. That's really not going to get it done. It's not a particularly comfortable position for me to get into, and it probably doesn't look particularly quite right. That's not really what we see the best players in the world do. But equally, we don't see them sort of doing things like this, where, you know, the club goes way in behind them, the face points up at the sky, and the elbow points down. So with my right arm, I can almost create any sort of weird and wonderful shape of backswing that I want. So because we have so many different movements available to us, how do we get the right one? We're going to use the weight of the club. So in a moment, we're going to give ourselves a reference point on the floor, but I want you to take a normal grip, take your lead hand off, and just set up. You can just set up just inside of a ball and just put your arm behind your back. And all I want you to do, set the club around about a foot to 2 feet in front of the ball, and let's just start that movement back and through. Okay, club's moving back probably, you know, let's say 3 feet back and through. And I'm trying to keep my grip pressure incredibly light here. Okay, super light. I'm just trying to feel and sense the weight of that club and just creating a nice little rhythm. Now in a moment, I'm going to add a little bit of shoulder turn in my backswing, and I'm going to get the weight of the club, which I feel and sense is down here, to move above my hands in the backswing. So let me show what that would look like. I'm adding a bit of turn, and then I'm just going to get the weight of the club to move above my hand. And what we start to get is very naturally, we get the arm folding. And that's really, really important. Notice from that face on that there's a little bit of bend, my wrists have set, and you'll notice that the golf club, give or take, maybe not exactly, references my golf ball. So just to give you a little bit of a visual for that, and you can do this in practice, take something like an alignment stick and just give yourself the ball to target line. So that line should, hopefully, provided I've set it up okay, be pointing pretty much towards my target. And you'll notice that if I do that little process again, so start that movement of feeling and sensing the weight of the club, I'm going to add some turn and get the weight of the club above my hands, we get something that looks like this. Arm is starting to fold correctly, club is pointing, well, you can probably tell better than I can, at that target line, and this is pretty much a perfect trail arm position. You're never, if you do that little exercise, I guarantee you're never going to start and go like this. We see that all too often, elbow getting so far behind you, club doesn't set, and you're never going to try and muscle the club and get it around here, because that doesn't feel particularly natural. We're using and feeling the weight of the club and using that to our advantage. So there is my backswing. So I'm going to set myself up to the ball, hover it, start my little movement back and through, and then just go ahead and set the wrists and clip the ball off the tee. So now we'll come on to the downswing. Get the backswing position, yeah, that's super important, but we've got to talk about the downswing. But if you were going to throw a ball, what your right arm does is super important when it comes to delivering speed into that ball. You would never be able to throw this ball as far as you could if the elbow didn't lead the hand. If it was the other way around, it was like this, then that would be a push. You'd be pushing that ball. But if I wanted to throw it as far as I can, I have to get that elbow leading, and when that hand catches up and overtakes, that's when the speed goes into the golf ball. So when I've made my perfect backswing that you've all made now, if you think about me starting my downswing, the elbow is leading the hand. But what so many of you will do is, because of a potentially poor pivot or the body doesn't work particularly well, the arm or the elbow slows down and the hand and the club accelerate. So we start to get to a point where we're about here, and you can see that my hand is no longer behind my elbow, and that's in that kind of pushing movement. So if you relate that to throwing a ball, it would be the hand going this way too early, and then we have to kind of push it. And if that's you, then you're going to feel like potentially through the ball that you're kind of muscling it with your body. You feel like there's a lot of effort going into your golf swing, and actually you're not getting a lot of distance. That sounds like you. Right arm is going to be an absolute game changer. So I've set up a little exercise. I'd love you to do this. This is so simple to do, and it's really going to educate you as to how to move this right arm. And I'm going to set myself up probably just over 2 golf balls in front of that alignment stick with my club head. So you can see my club head is 2 golf balls further forward than that alignment stick. Now, I'm going to make my little backswing and get my arm in position. And what I'm looking to do is just get the golf club to land on the ground in front of the alignment stick. Now, with any luck, that looks relatively easy, and to me, it feels relatively easy. What's going to happen is if you don't move your body particularly well, you're going to find that incredibly difficult, and you're going to find that if you do hit the ground, it's almost always going to be back behind the golf ball. So watch as I do this in fairly slow motion. I'm setting my arm, and then I'm using my body rotation to move my hand and my arm closer to the golf ball. I'm actually not using my arm at this stage. I'm saving that position until I get to around about here. Now my elbow's in front. Now I can use my arm and I can land the club. So I'm using my arm much later in my downswing. And that's really the key. The great golfers who have great arm position will set the arm really well. They will hold that arm position, and they will use the angles that they've created when they need it. And when do they need it? They need it through impact. They don't need it early in this downswing. Right, fingers crossed, let's see how we go. I'm definitely taking that one. That was about as good as I could have expected. Little divot, which suggests that I got a negative, a downward hit. I landed the club after the ball, the pivot was good, you saw my end position. Right arm functioned perfectly in that golf swing.